What's up, fellas? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite team of the NBA offseason, the Chicago Bulls. Not only do they have a ton of things to consider with their own roster, with the impending free agency of Zach Lavine in 2022, with their own free agents, with possible sign and trade stuff, with possible big trade stuff, but there's also just so many different directions this team can go in terms of improving the roster, and they're very motivated to do so with owing some future picks to different teams. So with those things said, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about Chicago. So I'm just going to get right into it. This is a team that is going to be motivated for a variety of different reasons to be good next season. The first and the primary one being that Zach Lavine, as of the recording of this video, is a free agent in 2022. Zach Lavine is a max contract level guy. At the time that he signed the offer sheet of the contract he's currently on that pays him about $19.5 a year, Sacramento signed him to an offer sheet and Chicago matched it. At the time that that contract went down, a lot of people thought that it was an overpay, and it was not a smart decision, not only by Sacramento to offer the offer sheet, but for Chicago to match it. But Zach Lavine has certainly outperformed the expectations of that contract. He has been healthy the entire time, and he is a max contract level guy, and a guy that you have to be afraid if you're Chicago about possibly leaving, most likely to some kind of crazy LA situation with him having come from UCLA, right? So that is absolutely priority number one for Chicago, is trying to sign Lavine to an extension this offseason, but mostly proving to him that Chicago is the place to be and building a really good team around him so that along with the amount of money you can offer him, entices him to stay. Incredibly motivated to be good next year, not to mention the fact that they do owe Orlando their 2023 pick, in addition to having to give up their pick this year to Orlando. So the time to continue to rebuild and all that stuff is over for Chicago. They've traded future assets for Nikola Vucevic. They've got a handful of young players in this roster, but they need to step up. They need to develop. They've been tanking for too long to continue to miss the playoffs year after year. This has to be the year that they turn it around. How will they do that? Well, let's look at their offseason. Let's look at their payroll. First and foremost, they do have a little bit of cap space this offseason. They can maneuver. They can make some things happen if they choose to. However, they have some of their own free agents they need to take a look at. They need to figure out if they want to offer Cristiano Felicio a max contract or not. Certainly a productive player, a guy that doesn't matter at all. He's an expiring contract. Let's just ignore Felicio, right? Lauri Markkanen is the guy we need to pay attention to here. As a restricted free agent, one of the more interesting sign and trade possibilities in the league as well, and someone that is talented. And that is a theme up and down the Chicago roster. There's a good amount of talent here. It's just depending on whether or not that talent is going to develop and produce. Ideally, Lauri Markkanen is an ideal stretch four offensively in the NBA, with some perimeter skill to put the ball on the floor, can really shoot the basketball, and can score from all levels. The problem is he doesn't have the foot speed to really guard all that well, and he's not a fantastic fit at the four depending on who you have out there. And despite the talent and the scoring ability that exists with Markkanen, I don't know if Chicago is going to be the place that he's going to continue to develop now that they have Vucevic and then, of course, Lavine taking up the majority of the offensive stuff in addition to Coby White, while also having a decent amount of value, I think, in a possible sign and trade to a different team. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Bulls look at a sign and trade for Lauri Markkanen, whether that be for a bigger name player or otherwise, as we'll kind of get to later. Apart from that, in terms of their own free agents this offseason, it's Daniel Tice, Garrett Temple, Denzel Valentine, Javonte Green, guys that are not super critical to this roster. But again, everything kind of points towards that Zach Lavine free agency in 2022 and trying to sign him to that extension this offseason. So they need to make moves to help them win now. It's Lavine in 2022. It's Vucevic in 2023, by the way. Things can get very dark very quickly in Chicago. And again, this is a team that has been tanking for multiple years just to get to where they are. And the goal is clearly to make the postseason next year. One point I want to make here as we kind of look at the payroll here. There are, and this is a comparison we're going to see a lot over the next couple of years, there are some minor similarities from this roster to the Phoenix one prior to Chris Paul's arrival. Of course, this team is not trading for Chris Paul, but you look, and there's a lot of guys that have been drafted in the lottery on this roster. There's a lot of guys that have talent that could contribute to a winning team that haven't necessarily been able to do that to this point in the league, and some of them are really starting to develop. Lavine is 26. Coby White is going to be 22 next year. They're really starting to get to the point where they could develop into nice young players, and maybe this is a team that makes a huge leap next year. The guy that I think, though, really holds the keys to this Chicago roster and to unlocking what they can possibly be, whether they bring in other guys via trades or free agency or not, is Patrick Williams, because the theme up and down this roster is offensive talent without a ton of defensive either motivation or talent or ability. And Patrick Williams has the ability and the talent to be a defensive player of the year caliber defender, one of the most versatile defenders in the entire league for his career. He's still incredibly young. He fits relatively well at the 4 spot alongside Vucevic because he has the ability to space the floor, which is something that Williams is still working on. If he becomes the player that he is supposed to and that he has shown flashes of as a rookie, that changes a lot of things for this Bulls roster, and I think they're going to kind of calculate that in when they're looking at what to do, because I think the main goal here, apart from retaining Lavine and retaining Vucevic, is to get another guy here and to get someone alongside those two guys that can score, they can kind of fill in the gaps and potentially play on the wing or maybe a truer point guard, kind of like we've seen with Devin Booker, that now allows Lavine to play off the ball more. And if you can do that without giving up Patrick Williams, this roster starts to look really, really fleshed out, right? Let's just say they get a nice point guard, they get Lavine, they get a 3-and-D wing in free agency. Then they've got Williams and Vucevic. That's a really, really good team. Williams can take up a lot of ground defensively, make up for a lot of mistakes, and you'll certainly have plenty of scoring punch just with Vucevic and Lavine, and then the third guy can really just be icing on the cake. So how would they go about doing that, bringing in this potential third star? What trade packages do they have on the table? Well, the one that's going to continue to come up is they do have multiple expiring contracts available. So if, for example, a Bradley Beal trade came about, it would not be difficult for them to match salaries. Thaddeus Young, $14 million expiring going into the 2022 offseason. Al-Farouq Aminu, same thing, $10 million. Thomas Satoransky, same thing, $10 million. That's $34 million in expiring contracts right there. So pretty much any big-time player, any big contract is on the table for them without even accounting for the actual assets that would be in the trade, which is Coby White, possible Lauri Markkanen sign and trade, and then future picks as well. If I'm Chicago, that's the route I'm taking. I'm putting that trade offer on the table, trying to find a third guy, ideally a true point guard alongside Zach Lavine, and then secondary to that would be a nice wing to bring in, allow Lavine to be the on-ball guy, and then a wing that can defend and be a perimeter scorer for me. That trade package of those expirings, Coby White, Lauri Markkanen, and picks, that's what I'm centering everything around, and I'm holding on to Patrick Williams for dear life because he's so much different than anybody else in this roster. He has more upside than any of the other young guys on this roster, and that includes Coby White. I really do like Coby White. I've liked him ever since he came into the league. I think that in his prime, he can be a really, really good backcourt scorer, probably ideally suited as a sixth-man type player, but someone that's really talented. But I just personally would rather invest fully in Patrick Williams, and that's the guy that I would hold on to and hold out of these potential trade talks because I understand how he fits on my roster. I don't understand how Coby White and Zach Lavine fit together in the backcourt. Defensively, it's just not going to work. But I understand the differentiating skill set that Patrick Williams provides compared to the rest of my roster. And you can start to see not only the excitement that I have for this team and for this offseason, but the number of different possibilities here for Chicago. They can re-sign Lauri Markkanen, put him at the 4 spot, and then you've got Coby White, Zach Lavine, Patrick Williams, Lauri Markkanen, and Nikola Vucevic. Now, I personally wouldn't recommend that. That sounds like an awful defensive team and is not an ideal fit for Patrick Williams if you're running him out there at the 3 spot, but it's something that you can consider, and you've got relatively good depth with Young and Satoransky and Al-Farouq Aminu as well, potentially. Or you could look to make a bigger splash. You could look to trade for a bigger name with those expirings, with that trade package that I talked about, to bring in a third guy to really push this team towards being a top 5 team in the East next year. Or you could look to just get value out of someone in Lauri Markkanen that hasn't quite developed in Chicago the way that they would have hoped, sign and trade him somewhere else as a restricted free agent, and then go from there. Now, the problem is, what direction are they going to choose, and is any of it going to be enough for Zach Lavine to be convinced to stay? Because that is the thing here. Like, there's so much on the line for Chicago. Zach Lavine has been through rebuild after rebuild. They've been losing for 4 years, and if they don't prove to him that they can build a competent team and a competent franchise, they're going to be looking at a situation where Lavine leaves in 22, Vucevic leaves in 23, they owe a pick in 23, and the young talent on this roster just does not exist. They don't have their pick this year to end up adding. Like, they don't have high-level, Zach Lavine-level young talent if that guy leaves. As much as I love Patrick Williams, and as nice of a player as I think Coby White is going to be, if they start losing guys like Lavine and Vucevic, it's going to get real scary. Now, if they start to get an indication that that's going to happen, we can definitely be looking at possible Zach Lavine trades during the season, and then following that, Nikola Vucevic trades as well. really, really exciting stuff potentially here for Chicago, but also potentially some really scary stuff. And I'm incredibly interested to see what they do here moving forward with this group. Just so many different variables, so many things to pay attention to. I'm ready. I'm excited. Let's see what the Bulls do this offseason, man. They have a few of the more intriguing players in the entire league on their roster, whether it be free agents or just young players. We'll see what they do. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing to the channel if you are new. Once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.